friend.
Hey, Daddy, this is the man of the champions, Bill Fonzie Alfonso, giving a shout out to
Something else.
something else, Daddy.
This is Nickel Matara, Great Warrior Wolf, and you are listening to Something Else.
I'm Tony Cini, and you're listening to something else.
Hey everybody, it's Rich Palladino, the voice of New England, and you are listening to Something Else with Aria.
Hey, we're off to a good start. We played the right theme song. Welcome to episode number 236 of Something Else. Feast your ear holes in this week's episode as we take a look at NWA Total and Nonstop Action, episode number 67 from October 15th, 2003 in Nashville, Tennessee. My name is Aria, and joining me as always is the NWA champion Hulk Hogan to my NWA champion Jeff Jarrett. Is Cindy. Cindy, what do you mean neither of them are the NWA champion?
Well, they were booked like they're the champions. I want to start out with something. Because we talk about the show beforehand. And one thing that you've said that you do on for the show is you'll watch half of it the previous night, and then you'll watch the rest of it the next day. I did something similar.
It depends on the day. Like, the last couple of, I'd say watching one fell swoop, but with all the times you have to pause during the fucking show, it takes about 3 hours to watch a 2-hour show.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
I did something similar this time.
Okay.
I watched the show about 3/4 of the way. I stopped, got my hair done, and then came back.
Did you feel any better watching that last 30 minutes after getting your hair did?
We'll talk about it when it arrives.
All right. So there's really only one TNA story in the Observer this week, and it's really not even this week. It just makes the rest of this week's show look embarrassing. 6 days from today, on October 21st, TNA had to postpone Bound for Glory due to a knee injury by Hulk Hogan during his match that we'll talk about with Masahiro Chono at the Tokyo Dome. Right now, it's been postponed to a non-specific date in February. Hogan is going to have surgery on Halloween. He agreed to do the show on the 29th and has cut apparently dozens of localized promos building up the November 30th pay-per-view that are now going to have to be redone. But that also answers the question, if you've ever seen like that clip, because there was a TNA commercial way back when for the weekly pay-per-views going around of Hogan ripping a TNA t-shirt. If you've ever seen that, this is when that happened. They filmed a whole bunch of clips of him and never got to use them for their intended purpose. So they pulled what they could and made a commercial out of it.
Oops.
But yeah, so we don't know it at this point, as of October 15, 2003, as they're blatantly building that show up on November 30th throughout this show. But yeah, that show is not happening on November 30th. And as we'll get to over the next few months, that show does not happen at all. But,
it does happen, but it doesn't happen until October 2005.
Well, the Jeff Jarrett versus Hulk Hogan NWA title match does not happen at all.
Right.
All right. So on to the show. During the pre-show video, as Cindy noted last week or maybe the week before, they've been putting in a bunch of explosion clips into the pre-show video. And one of them that they showed was D'Lo Brown telling Eric Watts that because he is a player, he is able to leave and does not have to stick around. And which is a weird way to cover up the fact that he is going on an all-Japan tour. Instead, we're just pretending that our babyface the guy who spent the summer challenging for the world title, is a coward. And he's afraid of wrestling the red shirt security people.
Yeah,
All right.
excellent storytelling there, boys. Or should I say, yeah, this was one of Russo's last things before he takes a 4-month hiatus.
Oh, then this is far from the worst thing that Vince Russo booked himself to do this week. Um, so TNA and West,
Yeah.
normally they wait till after the opener to have their on camera. This week they had their on camera first. TNA announces that he has the biggest story in TNA history. He pulls out a Japanese newspaper and talks about how Hulk Hogan returned to wrestling at the Tokyo Dome this past Monday, defeating Masahiro Chono. And then TNA shows bloodied pictures of Hogan in a Japanese newspaper after an attack by Jeff Jarrett. Oh my God. And TNA says we will have video of that tonight. And he says that Don Callis is not here tonight, but he is going to ask Jarrett why he attacked Hogan. Now, the reason why Don Callis is not here tonight is for the same reason Juventud Guerrera is not here tonight and somebody else. TNA sucks at getting people their immigration paperwork, but apparently Scott D'Amore is actually working on Callis's and he is expected back shortly.
I gotta think 3 Live Crew weren't on this show, so
Well, BG could not get into this country.
couldn't leave the trailer park. So it's probably Conan's.
More than likely. Because, yeah, and this isn't like a 2003 TNA thing either. And it's like, I'm sure they're much better at it now, especially, they've brought in, talent from Japan frequently when they had to deal with New Japan. But, this is a TNA thing for at least the next decade or so. They do not like to pay for the actual paperwork, and there are going to be multiple instances of people just disappearing who are on this show because TNA didn't do the proper paperwork and just tells people to just say that they're here on a tourist visa, which makes less sense when they get their bags searched and their bags are full of wrestling gear. You know, I spoiler alert, it is not a good idea to lie to the border patrol people. But,
Or TSA for that matter.
Well, what do we know, right?
Yeah.
So outside, Raven was somehow chained via a pair of dog collars to Jim Mitchell and was dragging him into the arena. I wrote that I doubt it will ever be mentioned how Jim Mitchell ended up wearing a dog collar. It will not be mentioned how that happened.
Magic.
So we were just supposed to believe that Raven just has the magical ability to hook Jim Mitchell up to a dog collar.
By the way, I have to make note of this. Jim Mitchell was outside of the building with Raven. I mean, you figure that he would have Slash and Vampiro right by his side at all times. He knows that Raven's going to attack him.
Well, maybe he was out taking a piss behind the building.
Yeah, Jim Mitchell seems to be the type of person that would do that.
Great. So it's good that we get everybody on this show sued, since Trey and I do a pretty good job of getting us sued normally. We need Jim Mitchell now to come after you for saying that.
I mean, what does he care? He'd probably admit to it.
So Slash and Vampiro attacked Raven, and somehow Mitchell got loose and ran away as Slash dove off the seats with an elbow to Raven, who was laying on a table. In ran CM Punk and Julio Dinero to quote-unquote stop Vampiro. Not sure how this was stopping Vampiro since they already put Raven through a table. Anyway, they fought into the ring until the referees and the black shirts broke it up.
For an opening segment, this ain't bad. I mean, it sets up something that was going to affect something later on in the show and also in future shows.
Like,
So,
here's the thing: this angle, like, we're gonna get to this show, you know, in the grand scheme of things via TNA, this show runs short. Like, these shows normally go an hour 52, hour 53. I think last week's went an hour 56. This one went, I think, like an hour 47.
hour
And
49, yeah.
they are rushing through stuff. It's like, uh, again, I should not be asking questions like, why is Raven dog collar to Jim Mitchell? Like, you know, these are questions that should not be asked. And it's like, this whole show, we're just going bang, 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 bang. And it's like, we don't even have enough stuff to do the bang, 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 bang stuff. And we'll get to the worst of it. Like, but yeah.
I mean, you
It,
could easily spend a minute, have Scott Hudson was already out there. You could have him interview Jim Mitchell and talk
it
about the Ravens match with Slash, and then have Raven jump him and snatch the dog collar on him.
you know how in Murder She Wrote, if Angela Lansbury knows you, you're either about to be murdered or about to be accused of murder. And so the joke is, if you see Angela Lansbury coming, run in the opposite direction. Or what was her name on Murder She Wrote? Whatever her
God,
name was. Yeah. If you ever see her
Rebecca,
coming,
someone.
no, it wasn't Rebecca. I can't think of what it is, but it wasn't Rebecca. But anyway, so
They're
you
reviving it,
know,
by the way, or they already
at,
have.
at this point, if you see Scott Hudson walking towards you, run in the opposite direction. Nothing. Jessica Fletcher, by the way.
Oh, right.
Yes. If Jessica Fletcher or Scott Hudson are walking in your general direction, run the opposite direction. Nothing good can ever happen.
Speaking of somebody who should have heeded that advice,
We have a quick cutaway to Scott Hudson, who is talking to Vince Russo about tonight's main event match. Russo read his own cage match profile and said that he's not wrestling tonight because he never wrestles again. And instead, he has substituted in the legend. AJ asked about next week, and Russo basically told him to worry about next week, and for no one to bother him while he deals with stuff.
I love how AJ plainly asks, "Are you about to do something stupid?"
Yeah.
And then I could just picture AJ with Ekmo, Siaki, and Trinity and Legend, and Vince Russo's like Homer in front of his console in Sector 7G. AJ's gonna whisper, "Get ready, everybody. He's about to do something stupid." And he will later on in the show. But because our main event got changed, they figured, fuck it, we'll have it first.
You see, Vince Russo was the star of the match. So since we took him out of it, and put Legend in, it went from the main event to the opener. And like, this is the other thing too. Like, they could have done that on the TNA website. Like, we wouldn't have known because obviously it's 2025 to 2003. But they could have said on the TNA website, "Oh, Vince Russo is backing out of the match, and it's going to be replaced by Legend." No. They thought that Vince Russo being booked for the main event was such a big deal, that it was such a big draw, that they had to wait until the show began in order to do the angle to take Russo out of that match. After you've already paid your $9.99, without realizing, by the way, that let's say that was true. Let's say people were going to buy this show because Vince Russo was wrestling and that they hoped Dusty Rhodes kicked Vince Russo's ass. You have now baited and switched your hardcore audience, the people who actually buy this show every week, by promising them something and taking it away.
I'm trying to think around this time. We don't have the numbers. How many people
Well,
bought the show per week? What, 8,000, 10,000,
if
something like that?
i- if they're lucky at this point, because you know TNA, especially during this time, and ECW were the two promotions that you could basically, bank on their buy rate based on the what you call it, the feedback in the Observer. For whatever reason, shows that got good feedback, got more feedback in the Observer had higher buys versus shows that had less feedback. And since the 2 week break, or I guess the 1 week break, the buys have been down quite a bit. And I'll be interested in seeing how next week's looks, because remember like 3 weeks ago when I said that I liked the idea about them building up Jarrett versus AJ for a month? We'll get to the end of this show. They have long since given up on, really promoting that match.
Yeah.
But anywho, we go to the opener, which is Sonny Siaki, Ekimo, and Legend with Trinity versus Dusty Rhodes and America's Most Wanted. This is what I forgot. When was the last time Legend was on the fucking show? Was he in Wednesday, Bloody Wednesday?
I think it was Wednesday, Bloody Wednesday. He was another one that probably had visa issues. Because isn't he he's from England.
He was from
Wait a
Canada.
minute. Hold on a second. I know why he was away. It was that stupid celebrity wrestling show in Britain. He was one of the coaches or trainers.
Well, two things. First, he's Canadian, not English. But secondly, and perhaps most importantly, that was in like 2008.
No, you're thinking Hulk Hogan Celebrity Championship Wrestling. There is a UK celebrity wrestling show from 2003.
I'm starting to think that you're just gonna come on here every week and tell us about UK television, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but you're telling us about UK darts and celebrity wrestling.
Trust me, celebrity wrestling in the UK was a shit show. I might have put you through the best damn sports show period when they had the wrestling shows. That at least had some worth and some storyline progression because of the Ultimate X match, which gave Sanjay a title shot.
Sabin.
Yeah, Sabin a title shot. Celebrity wrestling in the UK is useless.
Well, Dusty Rhodes, remember the last 2 weeks Dusty wore tights while wrestling? Apparently someone smartened him up because he put his jeans on for this show. And I'm confident that that's the last time you'll ever see Dusty Rhodes in his tiny little trunk. Yep. Keep in mind, if you would have told me that Royal Rumble 91 was the last time he wore his tiny little trunks, I'd believe you. But at least to the best of my knowledge, that's the last appearance of Dusty Splotch, was in the 91 Rumble. So the faces took turns delivering elbows to Siaki. Storm threw Siaki out of the ring onto Ekmo, who was supposed to catch Siaki, but didn't. Then moments later, America's Most Wanted did their spot where Storm backdrops Harris out of the ring, and Ekmo stepped away to avoid bumping, I guess, and left it for his partners. Back in the ring, Harris gave Legend a clothesline. That Legend somehow took it like he was being given a bulldog. I don't know how you do that, but Legend managed to do that. Storm got the hot tag, and a six-way breaks out. Siaki and Ekmo took care of AMW, and then Dusty took out all three heels with bionic elbows, which included Ekmo bumping for it. Hey, if you're going to bump for someone, you might as well bump for Dusty. The finish saw Ekmo go for a top rope splash on Dusty, but got pushed off the top, and Storm pinned Legend with a death sentence. Mind you, I would rather have seen AMW versus any of the two in a standard tag match, but for the most part, this wasn't bad at all, and it gave me an unrealistic eagerness about this week's episode. 5.5 out of 10.
I thought it was perfectly adequate. And this is how I want to see Dusty from here on out. He's a third man in a six-man tag. He does a few spots. He pumps up the crowd, and we move on with our lives. You get
Honestly, I don't think we need him wrestling at all. But yeah, if you're gonna use him, like this is the way to use him.
yep,
Like he comes in to do a hot tag spot, and that's about it.
does his
Um,
elbows, does a little dance, and
yeah.
lets AMW do the big finish.
Yeah. Okay, I'll even
I give it
say
a
like
4.5 out of 10, by the way.
I'll even say it wasn't even like the worst idea in the world to have him do a world title match, just because it's like you have Dusty. Nostalgia is always a big thing. What the hell? It never hurts to, try it, but yeah, it fell flat. Now I will say, when we get to the end of this show and I'll be ranting and raving about it, I can almost guarantee, and obviously it's impossible to tell for sure, but I can almost guarantee that had this match gone on in the spot where the last match goes on this week, I still would have disliked this show a lot,
Yeah.
you know. But we'll get to that. And like how I just mentioned that they're all over the place with this show today, even though the show runs short. We are immediately whisked away. Like today did not even have time to put over the winners of the match. We were immediately whisked away to a paid advertisement by a seated Shane Douglas. He was surprised by what was in front of him, and in walked two pairs of breasts. Now, that's not me being sexist. Literally, these two women walked in, and we never saw their faces, and the cameras were focused entirely on their breasts. And one was obviously Tracy Brooks, and the other was probably the other bitch slap girl.
Nurse Rebecca.
Veronica.
So
Is there someone in your life named Rebecca, Cindy? Sheesh. We're getting a lot of Rebeccas here on tonight's show. Were you watching Becky Lynch wrestle and you're like, man, Rebecca Lynch over here?
no, not really, because truth be told, I really don't find her that attractive.
Well, you didn't have to be an attractive thing. You just be watching Becky Lynch wrestle and be like, oh, look, Rebecca Lynch.
Honestly, I've lapsed when it comes to wrestling.
And then I forcing you to watch the worst stuff I could possibly find.
Yes, I'm like Joel in the Satellite of Love. No, it would be Mike, and you're Pearl Forrester.
What
Soon you're
are
going to
you
make me
talking
watch
about?
Uncensored 95 or a random XPW show, and I'll have to riff on that with Tom Servo and Crow T Robot.
I mean, I'll be watching Uncensored 95 sooner rather than later, so you're welcome to watch along and rant and rave about it. Um, Scott Hudson was now with Michael Shane, the hardest working man on television, Scott Hudson. And Michael Shane is going to be wrestling Christopher Daniels. And then, like, this is when, I guess this was really the first real interview of the show. They were doing the Andre the Giant camera shot. And I wrote, why are they doing this for Michael Shane? And like, for those who don't know, the Andre the Giant camera shot is what they used to do in the WWF that they later did with Big Show, where it's like the camera shoots really low, pointing up at Andre and then the Big Show to really put over how big these people are. They were doing it here for Michael Shane, who is shorter than Scott Hudson. But it turned out they did that for everybody on this show.
Mm-hmm. So it made me think somebody got lazy. Like, how hard is it to set up a tripod, get it up to its maximum height, which, if this was a normal production style tripod, it would be at least 5 feet tall.
Maybe Puppet was the cameraman this week.
I think Puppet was probably doing time.
Okay, then one of the other midgets from last year, Tio.
Tio.
Tio, he thought the was he the hardcore midget or was that no, that was probably Puppet. Well,
Both.
well, Tio probably thought he was in a hardcore match, and the camera was his weapon.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the entire show, it's low-angled camera shots to make Michael Shane look almost 5.5 feet tall.
Mm-hmm.
We then get our match. By the way, he said that Christopher Daniels is a tremendous opponent, but he's not as good as Michael Shane. Cindy, remember last week when Christopher Daniels had his match with Frankie Kazarian, and after the match, he said he no longer needed the followers because he was going to go get his family?
Well, so much about that, huh?
Michael Shane versus Christopher Daniels with the followers this week.
Good Lord.
And now, I'll tell you what I liked here. We talked about last week, when Shane took on Sabin, even though, I mean, I think at this point, we'll get to this in a bit, but I think Sabin is pretty much a babyface at this point. But at least as of last week, they were still two heels, but they played the match with Sabin playing the subtle babyface role. This week, and I was like interested in this because I'm like, Shane, they've really been pushing as a heel. Daniels is been a main event heel. So who the hell is going to play babyface here? Turns out the answer was none of them. Neither of them were playing babyface in this match. Both were openly cheating, which, hey, I'll be honest, that's what you want in a match like this. When you have a match between two heels, they should not be having a clean catch-as-catch-can wrestling match. They should be trying to out-cheat each other, and that's what we got here. Shane Douglas was shown watching from the shadows, taking notes. If this was truly a Vince Russo show, Shane Douglas would be scouting the referee. Michael Shane, this is going to, we said this a few weeks ago, this is going to get really annoying saying Shane over and over again when there's now going to be two Shanes involved. But Michael Shane did a slingshot tope out of the ring where I think he was supposed to miss, but either he did not dive over far enough out of the way or Daniels didn't move out of the way fast enough because Daniels took Shane's knees right to his face, which sucked. And we've been talking about Michael Shane, and you've talked about your disdain for the man, and I've mentioned how fucking green he is. But I'll tell you what they did here. They made Michael Shane look like a resilient champion because he was kicking out of everything. And, Daniels gave him an acai moonsault press. He gave him a best moonsault ever. He gave him an angel's wings. All 3 times. Shane kicked out of those. Shane then went and grabbed the X Division title, but one of the followers jumped up on the apron and grabbed it for him. In the ensuing insanity, Daniels went headfirst into the belt, and Shane pinned him with a super kick. After the match, Shane beat up all 3 followers and Daniels some more until Chris Sabin, of all people, ran in for the save. Sabin snapped off a Hurricane Rana on Shane, who bailed. Sabin and Daniels then got in each other's faces and argued. And this is where I wrote, I'm pretty sure Sabin is now a babyface. Now, I'll be interested in seeing what you thought about this match, because personally, I really liked this match. Daniels made Shane look like $1 million here. I really like this match. I gave it a 7.5 out of 10.
I'll give you my score first, which is a 6 out of 10. It's the highest score I have for the entire show. So, best match of the night. You can't argue with that. And I would pretty much echo everything that you said. But this is something that I am going to harp on throughout this show. So many blown spots. Like, stuff that defies logic. Because we talk about the follower who had the X Division title. He held that spot for like 10-15 seconds waiting for Daniels to bonk his head onto the title and push him off the ring apron.
Let's ask what show you were watching when you said duck. Like, don't.
No, I was about to say Douglas.
Oh, I was about to say, don't curse us into getting another Dup Cup match.
Well, I think at this time, Trevor Murdoch is in developmental, so. we can avoid that.
Well, hey, on the ECW and TNN, I can attest that there are more Dups, and they are, uh, you know, they were in ECW too, and not just the one that fucked Stacy Carter. Anyway,
Stan's fucked Stacy. Wait a minute. Stan fucked the cat?
no, the one that uh fucked the cat when she was with Jerry Lawler. He was one of the Dups that were here in TNA, and he was one of the Dups that were in ECW.
So he was. So it wasn't the one who was Trevor Murdoch.
No,
So it had
it
to
was
be
like
Stan
Bo Dup.
because
No,
Bo Dup was.
Stan was Trevor Murdoch.
So it was Bo who fucked the cat. Okay. Look, can we talk about some?
It's very important to figure out which Dup is which. By the way, he's not yet in developmental. He's actually, I think he's just getting out of injury at this point because he's like a 4 month period where he doesn't wrestle. But he is currently still in Harley Race's WLW over in the Missouri area. Trevor Murdoch, or as
We're
he's known
just
at the time,
near
Trevor Rhodes.
ugh, a fake Rhodes.
Um, From here, we go to a commercial for Bound for Glory on November 30th. It's like the most generic looking commercial we've ever seen, and like the most generic logo we've ever seen. Like, it wasn't even like a good, you know, logo for Bound for Glory. This was like they put the words Bound for Glory in front of a U.S. flag. It was a tremendous look. From here, Mike Tenay pitches it to the video of Hulk Hogan in the Tokyo Dome and the famous post-show press conference where Jeff Jarrett shows up. Hogan talks about wanting to be the NWA champion and the IWGP champion. Jarrett storms in, hits Hogan with a guitar and a chair shot before punching him down, making him bleed. Chono, and I imagine there's a Japanese storyline with this that they don't mention here, but Chono made the save for Hogan. Um, and a bloodied Hogan was shown while Jimmy Hart screamed for help. Now, Jarrett did tell Tenay to put Chono over because they were trying to bring Chono in for Bound for Glory. Again, obviously doesn't happen, but work with us here, people.
They could have brought in Chono anyways, but with what we know what's going to happen, maybe it was for the best.
Yep. So yeah, this is like, this is the one that we've seen. Everyone has seen. Jarrett legitimately flew to Tokyo for this. This was not, taped in Tampa or whatever. This was legitimately in the Tokyo Dome. And it's a good angle, It's the kind of thing that gets done a lot in Japan for whatever reason. And yeah. But like I said, I like the angle, and if it would have worked, like if everything would have worked out with Hogan, I think it would have done decently. I think because like that was a great shot of Hogan on the ground bleeding, after getting his ass kicked, and then he's gonna come in and vow revenge on Jarrett. Like I
Probably
said,
could have sold out the Mid-South Coliseum.
It would have definitely sold out the Asylum. And speaking of the Asylum, we've got an angle here. And this is where this show went to shit, in my not so humble opinion. So Jeff Jarrett comes out for an interview.
Spoiler alert, it's where it went really downhill for me. Probably for a different reason.
Oh, I bet we have very similar reasons, at least at first here. But
yeah.
So Jarrett comes out to do an interview in the ring with Mike Tenay. Tenay wants to know why Jarrett attacked Hogan. Jarrett instead talked about the night how he lost the NWA title on June 11th due to Vince Russo, not due to AJ Styles, not due to Raven, but due to Russo. Jarrett said he spent 4 months overcoming every obstacle that Russo placed in front of him, and then 2 weeks ago, Dusty Rhodes opened his eyes that he needs to be a self-serving piece of shit. Now, the fans were mostly ignoring this, chanting for Hogan. And somehow Jarrett did turn this into calling Hogan the most self-serving piece of shit. He did make it make sense ultimately, saying that Hogan was talking about winning the NWA title, and Jarrett did not want to lose his title shot because a different legend now was talking about how he wanted the belt too. Um, and you know, Jarrett uttered the famous line that gets repeated, fairly often. Hulk Hogan wanted to come to TNA, so I took TNA to Hogan. It's a cute line, and hey, it brings in the story. Jarrett is tired of Hogan taking all the money and all the credit, and he's damned if he's going to let Hogan take his spot. And then this is where it starts getting wonky, because TNA just says, well, what about Florida? And Jarrett told him to never bring that up again. For what it's worth, nobody had any fucking idea what he was talking about by vaguely talking about Florida. He didn't say Daytona Beach. He didn't say, he probably couldn't have said Bash at the Beach, but like something more than Florida. It's like he was supposed to be a comment about Bash at the Beach, but nobody got it except dorks like me and Cindy, who immediately realized what he was talking about. But, they're not making any money off me and Cindy right now.
They'll be making money off you tomorrow.
Or 3 days ago is
when
everyone's listening to this. Well, technically, they've already made money off of me. I've already bought my ticket. Anyway, so before we get to the next part, the promo, I thought, more good than bad. I will say, and this becomes a major point of contention throughout the show, he is completely ignoring that he has a match with AJ Styles next week. Let's be honest, it is obvious, and I'm sure it was obvious in 2003, who was winning the match next week between AJ and Jeff Jarrett. However, they're at the point now where they're just not even pretending that there's going to be any other result to next week's match. AJ Styles is a complete afterthought. Remember WrestleMania 27 when it's it was building up Cena versus The Rock, even though the match was Cena versus The Miz? This was a bigger burial of AJ Styles on this show than the build-up to WrestleMania was for The Miz. At least The Miz occasionally got to come out and talk. At least Cena occasionally came out and talked about The Miz. Yeah. Jeff Jarrett had no interest in talking about AJ Styles and was building up an NWA title match with Hulk Hogan when he wasn't even the champion yet.
Or he spent all of his time talking about Vince Russo, saying it's Russo's fault, it's Russo's fault. Russo this, Russo that, Russo. And I was like, fuck off.
Now, I do believe that the next segment happened because Hogan ixnayed Russo. Because, as we talked about, the original plan that was very obvious when you watched the last couple weeks, the original plan was that Russo would turn heel on AJ, or turn on AJ, because he was already a heel, and help Jarrett win the belt, and they would be a two-person scumbag alliance that Hogan would come in and they would have a little feud with each other. And Hogan ixnayed Russo, and that led, because Russo's going to be gone, as we mentioned, this is his last show for a while, so we had to end the storyline with Jarrett and Russo, and oh boy, did we.
Yeah.
So, we've already talked about this. Next week, Jeff Jarrett is challenging for the World Heavyweight title. We've already acknowledged that he is going to win it because he's already cutting promos on defending it against Hogan. So, Jarrett is about to become the world champion. He's about to go into, or he actually already is in a feud with Hulk Hogan. And out comes Vince Russo and Vince Russo spears Jeff Jarrett. They fight out of the ring, over the barricade, and into the crowd, where Vince Russo continues to beat up Jeff Jarrett. He threw Jeff Jarrett into a propped up table that did not break. Security ran in and broke it up, and then, and only then, did Jeff Jarrett take back over. And there's a lot of issues with this, but one of the issues is that Russo legitimately had head injuries from his time in WCW. He had concussion issues from not being able to take bumps, and he was taking a lot of bumps. And so Jeff Jarrett legitimately is protecting Russo. But by doing it, it looked like shit. Because he's taking Russo down outside the ring and over the barricades onto the cement floor, but he's doing it in such a way that he has to make sure that Russo's head comes nowhere near the floor. And then we've talked about this now for 67 weeks. Jeff Jarrett beats the shit out of people with chairs. He stiffs the fuck out of people. This happens time and time again. It was almost to the point of like ridiculously underselling it here or overselling it. He is like hitting Russo in the back. It's that very dramatic WWE chair shot where it's like, okay, we can't hit them in the head, so we got to put them in a situation to hit them in the back, and it gets very awkward to look at. And he's giving Russo these weak chair shots to the back. He eventually ties Russo with a belt to the stairwell and keeps hitting him some more. And the key to it is that Russo told his fellow scumbags to stay in the back and not get involved. And, well, eventually they ignored him. And Siaki, Ekmo, and Trinity and Legend ran Jarrett off while AJ Styles, the World Heavyweight Champion, angrily stood in the ring.
The
Where do
offense. I'll say my part, then I'll let you just have at it. Russo shouldn't have got as much offense that he did, because he had a good amount of offense for about a minute or so before Jarrett took over. And then Jarrett just laid it in on him, for the back and for the front. But this wasn't he tried to get stopped by black shirt security, and he just brained all three of them with a trash can. And the beating of Russo, now, I'm not a fan of Russo. I know you're definitely not a fan of Russo. I can think of only two people who would have gotten off on this: Jeff Jarrett and Jim Cornette. I'm sorry, 5 minutes of this is just too much.
Yeah, exactly. Cornette would have just hit him in the fucking head. But, yeah, it's like this. I guarantee the only reason this was done because I'll just read my fucking notes at this point. Jeff Jarrett turns heel. For all intents and purposes, he's a heel at this point, and he comes to the ring to cut a promo to build up to two matches. One for the world title with the world champion AJ Styles, and the other with one of the biggest stars in wrestling, Hulk Hogan. His promo was not perfect, but it hit all the high points, and it was a good foundation to build on for the next few weeks. Then, instead of just walking to the back, he gets attacked and gets his ass kicked by the unathletic, egotistical head writer of the show. He does come back and beats Russo's ass, but like I said, it wasn't until security stepped in to pull Russo off of him. When they had a fair fight, Jeff Jarrett, the top star, the number one contender, the future world champion, got his ass kicked by someone who he will not be wrestling. The fans didn't know what to think since Jarrett just spent 10 minutes turning heel, and plus, this is an angle that A has been going on since November and B pretty much peaked months ago. This beating should have happened a while ago, but of course it didn't. And guess what? When it finally did, because they've been building this up for 11 months. And when it finally happened, no one gave a shit. No one gave a single shit. And you know what this reminded me of?
What?
Do you remember the story? I think Cornette told this that in 1998, Austin was supposed to have a house show run with Mark Mero, and they were going to have a few matches on a few house shows, and then
Yeah.
and then Sable power bombed Mero on TV, and Austin ixnayed the match and made them change the booking. I guarantee Hulk Hogan was watching this and was suddenly like, "Oh no, brother, my knee hurts all of a sudden." Because he just watched the guy that's supposed to be built up to wrestle him get his ass kicked and allow Vince Russo to kick his ass for minutes on end and needing assistance to get one over on him. I guarantee that's what happened. Because I'll bet you my left dollar, my last dollar or my left nut, whichever I was trying to say there, I'll bet that if this segment didn't happen, Bound for Glory would have happened. Guarantee it. Because Jarrett is usually smart enough to not put himself into these situations. We call him the Triple H of TNA for a reason, and it's not because, he's the world's greatest booker and everyone's sucking his dick about his booking prowess. Jarrett is not somebody that allows himself to look weak, and he looked weak here, and I guarantee that's why Hogan pulled out. Guarantee it.
I 100% buy that. Especially because how Jarrett will book himself for the next 3 years. Like, he doesn't look weak until he loses to Sting at Bound for Glory 2006.
He doesn't look weak until his wife dies. And that's when he finally realized there's more important shit to deal with in the world than wrestling. Anyway, Scott Hudson is now with redshirt security. Kevin Northcutt told Hudson that he will slap respect into Eric Watts like his daddy should have done. Northcutt said they ran off Jerry Lynn and D'Lo Brown, and he had a giant VHS tape that was apparently Roddy Piper's promo that was supposed to air this week, but Don Callis said it's not going to air, so he broke the tape. So yeah, remember last week when they said that Roddy Piper was going to be here and he's going to cut this big promo? This was it. No promo.
Yep.
It's DUNN done.
And I know the type of tape that he smashed.
It's one of those big ass tapes they have for the production crew.
Yeah, it's a Betacam SP tape. It's a Sony tape. Those things are like, I'm kind of disappointed they smashed that tape because those things are like $40. They could have saved that $40 and kept that tape. Now they gotta not book somebody and have to buy another tape.
Say they could have afforded to give Sanjay a few extra minutes on this week's show.
Yeah.
But yeah, remember this show was like full of. Remember last week when they promoted this? That's not happening. Like D'Lo Brown, in case you're curious, I think I said this earlier, but he's booked in All Japan. And he was booked in All Japan last week when they announced that this week he had a tag match. Because they taped that angle with him and Eric Watts at last week's show. So it wasn't like, oh man, All Japan called out of the blue and said, hey, tomorrow we need you in Japan. It's like, no, well known that D'Lo was not going to be here.
That is 100% true.
And I know
It,
D'Lo's going to be back, and I'm sure he'll be back sooner rather than later. But yeah, this, like I said, it made him look like a coward. You know,
they couldn't have just had red shirt security. I don't know, when he was talking to Eric Watts, jump him.
we're like, hey, we promised a tag match, and it's really telling you how bad Ryan Wilson is because Kevin Northcutt is always the person cutting promos. He's always the person in the ring, and Ryan Wilson is the person who gets credit for injuring everybody.
Now you're
Um,
starting to come to my angle of things that Ryan Wilson sucks.
I mean, I never said Ryan Wilson doesn't suck, but it's like I think this was a team that they could have done something with, and I guess they are doing something to an extent because it's like, but it's like, because it's like, and we'll get to this. This is going to be a bad example of this in this match we got coming up here in a second, but most of the guys in TNA, especially their tag teams, are shorter guys. And Kevin Northcutt and Ryan Wilson, who are like 6'4", 6'5", look like giants in comparison. Like we have Abyss who's 6 foot. Well, they claim he's 6'8", but he's closer to 6'5", 6'6". And so it's like in a company full of smaller wrestlers, you can get a guy who's 6'5" over as a giant. And so it's like I think they could do things with Northcutt and Wilson, and I don't think Northcutt is really that bad. I think this is just a pretty lousy gimmick. And the funny thing, and I mentioned this later, or I was thinking about this during the show, it's like, why are the black shirts all like small people? Like Chris Vaughn and what's his name, Rick Santel are tiny, and all the people they have that run out are tiny. And I mean, it builds up to a segment we'll get to here in a second, but it's like Jesus Christ, the red shirts are all 6.5 feet tall, and they're all a foot plus taller than the black shirts. It's like it's not even a fair fight at this point.
I think we know that it's intimated and probably sent out that Don Callis hired the red shirts.
Probably,
Remember
but I
back
thought they were here. I think they were here before him, though.
roughly around the same time, maybe a week before, they said TNA management sent us here. And
But it's
this
like,
is and
oh well.
then Callis came a week later or so after Sandman won the Hard 10.
No. He was here before that, wasn't he?
No.
I guess it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Anyway, Kevin Northcutt versus Eric Watts. Chris Vaughn and Rick Santel were shown at ringside, and they now got Chris Vaughn in a neck brace. Um, Even though his injury is a work bro. But Rick Santel, obviously, the arm in a sling is a shoulder injury there. Um, this match was bad, and I do not blame Kevin Northcutt at all for this. Eric Watts, I would say Eric Watts needs to know what he does best and do it, but I don't know what Eric Watts does best. At one point, he puts his leg around Northcutt's neck like he's going for a rocker dropper. But the point of that was so Northcutt could pick him up into powerbomb position so Watts could do the jankiest looking Hurricane Rana we've seen in a while.
Oof, that was rough.
We get a picture-in-picture where Vince Russo is taken away in an ambulance. Kevin Northcutt uses a pump handle power slam, and the referee counts to 3.5 before Watts kicks out. Now, in the interest of fairness, this is not Watts' fault. This is Rudy Charles, who sucks at his job, because Northcutt hits the slam. Watts is on his stomach. Northcutt is shooting the half to turn him over. And while Watts is laying on his side still, Rudy Charles counts to 1. And so they basically had to ignore that, and Charles had to scream too when he hit for the third time. Northcutt threw a clothesline over Watts' head that Watts took a flip bump off of. Don't ask me how. Watts hit a choke slam and then knocked Wilson off the apron because Wilson had jumped up on the apron. Referee Rudy Charles was distracted. What was he distracted by? Who knows? There were some fans cheering, so he may have been distracted because there were people actually making noise for this match. And so he was distracted by nobody. And while he was distracted by nobody, Kevin Northcutt pulled out his handcuffs, used them like brass knucks to KO Watts for the win. Yeah. Other black shirt security ran in to get their asses kicked. And this is where I wrote, just when I was wondering why all the black shirts are always the smallest people they could find, Don Harris, of all people, runs in, swinging a chair and running the red shirts off. Then, because enough was not yet happening in this segment, Goldilocks returned. Yes, Goldilocks returned and shoved her boobs in Eric Watts' face, helping him recover. She yelled at Don Harris to stop it. And what was Don Harris supposed to stop doing? Was he supposed to let the red shirts keep beating up Eric?
I have it here. Goldie went from having straight hair. You know how she always had straight hair on the show?
I wasn't paying attention to her hair all the time, but yes, I recall her having straight hair.
Now she's got frizzy skank 80s hair.
And she wasn't wearing a shirt. She was just out in her bra.
Point stands.
What was that?
The point stands.
Yeah. This was bad. We've seen worse, but this was bad. 0.5 out of 10.
I'm going to give it a 1 out of 10. So, yeah. Rudy Charles was saying something to Watts, saying how he can't pin Northcutt right there. And that led to the distraction, but that's like slipping lipstick on a pig. This match sucked ass. And it's not the fault of Northcutt. Like, no. Northcutt is a competent wrestler. Out of all four, like, if I had to hire one person out of all 4 of those people that we saw in this ring during the match, I would hire Kevin Northcutt. I mean, he could be a good mid-card heel. He's a decent talker. He's a decent worker. I might put a mid-card title on him once in a while, but not going to push him to the moon or anything.
No. He's a perfectly adequate big guy. And, yeah. So,
I'm going to talk about this next match. Dinner just arrived, and I'm going to get it. So,
grab your dinner. Press mute and then go grab your dinner. So, up next, we get, this was a real match on TNA pay-per-view, ladies and gentlemen. Eric Young and Sanjay Dutt versus El Fuego and Jarrell Clark. We were literally just talking about Jarrell Clark last week, him and Mikey Batts. Eric Young was introduced as hailing from Manhattan, New York. Eric Young, notable Team Canada member from Manhattan, New York. Now, El Fuego is Rob Echeverria, who's a guy that trained with Edge and Christian. He did the Death Tour stuff, all that fun stuff that people always talk about. But he's one of those guys that never got a break, and don't wait for him to get a break now, because this is a one-and-done appearance in TNA. And him and Eric getting booked is more of a sign of Scott D'Amore helping with booking than anything else. So this is the debut of Sanjay Dutt, who is with TNA off and on for like the next 13, 14 years, because like he comes back during the GFW period, and I think he actually, I'm not gonna say I think he does win the X Division title at one point, but it's like in 2017 or 2018 at that point. So Sanjay and Jarrell ran spots at approximately 207 miles per hour that got a bit of a reaction. Then EY and Fuego get in the ring, and Young got more of a reaction, pointing back and forth between himself and Fuego. Young did his double Death Valley driver on Fuego and Clark at the same time, before making the hot tag to Sanjay. The crowd was into Sanjay hitting his spots. We got a dive sequence that culminated in Sanjay doing a springboard tornado dive onto all three. Then, do you
I've
remember
been waiting
back
for
in
this.
December? Do you remember back in December when Jason Cross made his TNA pay-per-view debut, and TNA and West kept talking about the Crossfire, a shooting star press into a leg drop, and they
Yeah.
were like, "Oh man, it's this great move. He may hit it. I think he was wrestling Elix Skipper. He's gonna hit this great move, and it'll be amazing. Wait till you see this." He hit the shooting star leg press or leg drop. Elix Skipper did not get pinned. I forgot to be kicked out or grab the ropes or whatever. And then Elix Skipper won. And I went into a 5-minute rant and continued to rant about it for weeks afterwards about how they talked about how great this guy's move was. He hits it and then did not win the match. Now, you might be questioning yourself, saying, Self, why is Arya talking about Jason Cross? Jason Cross is not in this match. No, he is not. But what happened here was the whole match. Tenay and West were talking about Jarrell Clark does a 630 splash. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a 450 splash with another rotation. It's like, holy crap. Wait till you see this, people. He's going to do a 630 splash. And Jarrell Clark gets Eric Young in the ring, and he hits his 630 splash. And Sanjay Dutt broke it up. Then I wrote, this is literally just Jason Cross with a different flippy move. Sanjay then hits the Hindu press on El Fuego for the win, and we knew it was called the Hindu press because Tenay called it. So Tenay, our lead announcer, knew two things. That Sanjay Dutt was winning this match, and that Sanjay has a spectacular move called the Hindu press. And instead of pushing both guys as having amazing moves, and they're going to push it as, oh my God, Sanjay's got the Hindu press, but oh my God, Jarrell Clark has the 630 splash. If one of them are able to hit their move, they may win the match. Instead of doing it that way, where you're putting over both guys as having great moves, and I'd have less to complain about, instead, you spend the whole match, you spend 7 minutes of a 7-minute and 30-second match talking about the 630 splash that didn't win the match. And you didn't make a peep about the guy who's going to win the match's spectacular move. This match was closer to a party match, a modern day party match, than anything else we've seen on the show. There was not a lot of psychology thrown into it, though. I gave it a 4.5 out of 10. We're obviously going to see a lot better from both Eric Young and Sanjay Dutt over the next decade. And here's the thing. I still remember the 630 splash as being a big deal because I can still remember Tenay and West talking about it over and over and over again, on the Impact days when we get to Fox Sports Net. But the thing is, I also remember Jarrell Clark never winning. And so I went back and looked. Jarrell Clark has 41 matches in TNA. Cindy, do you want to guess how many of those 41 matches Jarrell Clark wins?
2.
4. And at least one of them is on Explosion, and one of them is a dark match. We're going to see him win 2 matches. And maybe if Jarrell Clark won more often than once every 10 matches, we'd all remember him more. Anyway, what were your thoughts on this?
You're right about this being the big party match. This is the progenitor of what we'll see a lot of in TNA for the next. Like, when did the X Division officially get ruined? 2010?
Honestly, it depends. I mean, when Russo came in, like the first thing he did was that pay-per-view that had Petey Williams shitting his pants, and then Chris Sabin bringing in a blow up doll during his match with Low Key, and that was on the same show.
Oh, the
So you could,
fucking jackass.
yes.
So
So you could say around
2006.
you could say around that point, but I mean, I'd say it was when Bruce Pritchard came in because that was when the X Division officially became the champion versus the challenger of the month. There was no actual division. There's never any matches really. They were being built up. It was just, hey, this month the champion's going to wrestle this guy. Next month he's going to wrestle that guy. And then in 2 months he's going to have a three-way against two guys he's already beaten. That was pretty much the end of the X Division.
Yep.
But go ahead.
Aside from that, these are the type of matches that would be put on normally first to get the crowd going. I mean, we've talked about this in past shows. What pops the crowd mainly at the start? A hot X Division multi-man.
Flippy people doing flippy stuff.
Yep. And we got it so far late into the match, late into the show. I did right here. Everybody sticks around in the match with varying success for years. Save for El Fuego, where will make one last appearance on a show we will never cover, losing to Gilberti and Swinger on an episode of Impact in 2004 during the Fox Sports Net days.
I would say, like, honestly, if it wasn't for the fact that, like, none of these four guys wrestled on Explosion, I would have said that there was a chance that this show was running short, so they just sent out, like, this match with, like, no prep. But, like, that's not what happened here. This was a scheduled part of the show in this spot. This was not Brian Pillman has died, so we're sending out the Disciples of Apocalypse and Los Boricuas to have an 8-man tag just to fill up time. This was a planned part of the program here. So from here, Scott Hudson was with Kid Cash about his match with Abyss. Cash called Hudson Scotty Not So Hottie. Cash said that he beats women and legends, and now he'll beat a giant. Then, because not enough stuff is happening on each segment, the Red Shirts walked up, and Kevin Northcutt said he just got off the phone with Don Callis and had to tell Kid Cash something, and Cash just blew him off and walked away. And to make it worse, I figured, okay, he's blowing them off and walking away so he could walk to the ring for his match, but his match wasn't even next.
No, we had to sit through a tag team match with the next match, which is Simon Diamond and Johnny Swinger in a non-title match versus, out of all teams, Danny Doring and Roadkill.
Danny Doring and Amish Roadkill. I gotta tell you this. Danny Doring lost whatever he had in ECW.
The steroids.
This oh, come on. They did not make enough money to afford steroids. But this match sucked, and it was not the fault of Simon, Swinger, or even really Roadkill. Gilberti joined the announce desk. Roadkill goes for a top rope dive to the outside, and I'm not sure which was more surprising, that he actually jumped or that Simon and Swinger moved, causing Roadkill to crash into the barricade, slamming it into the first few rows.
Can I be honest? When I saw Roadkill, he was in decent shape. I mean, decent shape for Roadkill. But he was bigger in ECW. He was definitely bigger in WWE, ECW.
See, I don't even think he was smaller here. I think the thing is, this is another one of those things that I just mentioned, like with Kevin Northcutt and Abyss, being giants, because it's a whole bunch of small people. ECW were people even smaller than most of the people in TNA. ECW was a notoriously small promotion where, like, 6'3" Mike Awesome was 6'8" because, well, everyone else is a foot shorter than him already. And so, like, you're able to get away with it. I think Roadkill was probably the same size as he was in ECW. It's just that, people here in TNA are not that much smaller.
Yeah.
Like they're smaller, but not that much smaller. Like he's not wrestling Guido and Tony Mamaluke on this show.
He's not even wrestling Jerry Lynn.
Yeah. And this match was bad, and the finish got fucked up here.
Oh yeah.
So Roadkill gets the hot tag and Pop the Crowd doing his big moves, the dirt rope slam and a top rope clothesline. So David Young goes over and distracts the referee while Swinger crotches Roadkill. AMW runs down to stop Gilberti from using a chair. Time stood still here as Swinger had a full Nelson on Doring, and whatever was supposed to happen didn't happen. I'm thinking Harrison Storm jumped the gun, and that Gilberti was supposed to get the chair involved more. But eventually, after, what felt like, a minute, but it was probably like a good 5 seconds, Doring just rolled up Swinger to get the win in this non-title match. The whole finish from David Young's interference on was horribly mistimed to bring down an otherwise all right match. And the biggest problem I had with this finish was that meant we had to have a rematch for the titles. I gave this match a 1.5 out of 10.
I gave it a 3 out of 10. I don't know. I was enamored by Roadkill's athletic prowess during the match. I mean, Roadkill looked good. I mean, it was kind of a competent match, but I have a different theory. I don't think it was AMW that jumped the gun. I think David Young missed a spot. Because how much you want to bet the spot was David Young was going to grab a chair or something while Johnny Swinger had the full Nelson on. Then
You would have clocked Swinger with the chair instead.
Yeah.
Like, even like going back to when Roadkill was on the top rope to get crotched by Young, Roadkill was up there a long time waiting.
Oh yeah.
It's like that's like this whole thing just fell apart. And it's like, I'm not looking forward to the rematch next week, but it's like it can't be any worse than this. And I guess that's a challenge to them to do a worse match than this, but I'm confident that it won't be. It almost has to be at least a little bit better.
It's got to be a little bit better because we know Diamond and Swinger are capable of putting on a good match, and I think they will.
So Scott Hudson was now in Raven's dressing room. Remember like 6 months ago when no one could find Raven's dressing room except the cameraman? Well, Scott Hudson found it, and he basically lives there at this point. Hudson's microphone stopped working for a few seconds, and Raven eventually said thank you, but no thank you to Punk and Julio for their help. Then Punk tried to cut a promo about their tag team match, but was immediately cut off to go to a video building up the Kid Cash Abyss match. Like, Jesus Christ, this show was like they were running out of time, and then by the end, they're like, holy shit, we have too much time left.
I had it written down the same thing. The production. The production baffles me. Like,
ultimately, what was even the point of this promo? Because, and we didn't mention this, but earlier when that angle with Raven and Jim Mitchell happened, they changed the Raven Slash match to a tag match with Slash and Vampiro versus Punk and Julio. And the way this Raven promo went, I thought he was saying, no, thank you. I'm going to have my singles match with Slash. And then, spoiler, the tag match happens.
Even though we wish it didn't.
That would have been 3 minutes of my life I would have gotten back. Um, so then, because again, we're just like, you know, so much shit is happening on this show. Kid Cash comes out to wrestle Abyss. And I'm getting ready to write, but then Kid Cash announces, or the Red Shirts announce, that Kid Cash is not wrestling Abyss, and instead, I don't know, Jerry Lynn is going to wrestle a handicap match against both of them or something. And then the bell rang and the match happened. So what the hell was that point of with the thing with the red shirts earlier talking about Don Callis? Anyway, Cash's number one offensive move was a slap to the face. His number two offensive move was to run away. And hey, it worked for a little bit anyway. Now, for this match, bell to bell, during this match, I did not hate it. Because the one thing we've complained about Abyss, or at least I've always complained about Abyss, is he is too generous in the ring in situations that he should not be. I don't think this was his first. No, this wasn't his first singles match, but this is one of his first singles matches, and he's wrestling somebody 200 pounds lighter than him and a foot plus smaller than him. He should not be selling for Kid Cash. He should not be taking Hurricane Ranas. He should not be, getting his ass kicked by this small ass Kid Cash. And he didn't during the match. So Abyss, the only time Abyss ever sold was when Cash either cheated or Abyss, missed a move. So the referee gets bumped. Cash grabs a chair and wallops Abyss with it 3 times. Cash shoots the half, but Abyss kicks out. Remember when Daniel Bryan cashed in Money in the Bank on the Big Show and the whole match was just him turning over the Big Show? This was not as entertaining as Daniel Bryan and the Big Show, but it's basically what they were doing here. Because Daniel Bryan made it look like it was a legitimate struggle to turn over the Big Show. Kid Cash looked like, well, give me 2 seconds, I'll get him over. Anyway, Abyss won with the Black Hole Slam. Then, apparently, this was a 2 out of 3 falls match, except it wasn't. Because after the match, Cash throws powder in Abyss's face and hit him again with a chair. The red shirts come out and stood on the ramp and glared. Abyss gives Kid Cash the shock treatment before Kid Cash leaves. What was the point of the post-match? Instead of just having Abyss win, they kept going, had Cash beat up Abyss some more, just so Abyss could lay him out again. Did Russo book this on his way to the hospital?
He booked it while the IV drip was in him and he's in this lucid state. Or he's got the morphine drip.
Anyway, I didn't hate this. It's not a very good rating, but I didn't give it, Kevin Northcutt versus Eric Watts rating. I gave it a 2.5 out of 10.
I gave it a 3.5 out of 10. It did what it set out to do.
I think if the post-match didn't happen, it probably would have been a 3.5. But again, it's like, here's the post-match, the unnecessary post-match. Because, again, what did the post-match accomplish? It was an angle for the sake of having an angle. Maybe it'll come out that the match went a minute shorter than it was supposed to, so they had to go and fill up a minute of time. And so, maybe I'd give them a pass on that. But it's they could, in my opinion, they could come up with some better way to do it than have this.
Yeah.
And Abyss beat Kid Cash, and then Cash had to get his heat back so Abyss could beat him again. It made no sense. Scott Hudson, on the show for the 58th time already, was backstage with Simon, Swinger, Gilberti, and Young. By the way, I didn't mention this earlier. Swinger, who a few weeks ago had his appendix removed, had his midsection taped. He had his DDP rib tape on. But I imagine it had more to do with the groovy scar that he now has.
Yeah.
Anyway, they were all yelling at each other. Gilberti said that Doring and Roadkill ran ECW out of business, so now they'll get a rematch next week. And also, he's going to have a tag team for America's Most Wanted to wrestle. I imagine Gilberti
Yay.
did not mean to make it sound like, well, these guys put ECW out of business, so now let's have them put TNA out of business too by booking them in a rematch. But that's what he's saying. So then, now I'm looking at the bottom of my screen, and there's 11 minutes left in the show when Vampiro and Slash come out to wrestle CM Punk and Julio Dinero. And I'm like, okay, well, this is going to be an 8-minute main event here, 9 minutes maybe, fun little match here to finish the show. And then I remembered earlier in the show, and we didn't mention this, they announced that AJ Styles was going to come out for a promo at the end of the show. And so I'm sitting here like, what the hell? There's only 11 minutes left in the fucking show. And as I'm saying that, Julio and CM Punk are literally running to the ring when Slash dives through the camera onto Julio running to the ring and began punching him to start this match. I probably am about to tell you every single thing that happened in this match because a lot was happening in the very little amount of time they had. Vampiro heaved Punk on his head with a Uranagi, and then Punk did a wonky Hurricane Rana. Slash and Julio were doing spots like two guys who just had their time cut to an epic degree, which I think is what happened here. Punk suplexed Vampiro on the floor, and then went to the top rope, but Vampiro shoved him off. Punk was bleeding as this crazy four-way brawl broke down into a tag team match. Julio got the hot tag when Vampiro kneed Punk in the back and Punk fell into the corner. Julio hit a full Nelson slam on Slash for what would have been the win, but referee Rudy Charles was now distracted by Jim Mitchell standing on the floor. Not on the apron, on the floor. And for no reason at all, he did not count and instead started yelling at Jim Mitchell. Why does Rudy Charles suck so much?
I have no clue.
Punk and Julio hit a doomsday blockbuster, but this time Mitchell actually got on the apron. Vampiro spat something at Punk and pinned him after a nail in the coffin. This match lasted less than 4 minutes. After the match, Raven ran down and took out both Vampiro and Slash. Raven ran after Mitchell, and they all slipped and fell and slid through the backstage curtain. 2.0 out of 10.
2.5 out of 10. Both of us have the same thing. But yeah. And plus, once again, sloppy production. Because one big spot was blown and was never shown. We heard about it from TNA, where Vampiro had pulled the mats up, and was going to do something to Punk on the concrete. But then Punk reversed it into a suplex. And we never saw it. All we did was hear about it from Mike TNA.
Now,
it's more maddening. The production is maddening. I mean, it takes me away from a show. It is bad, outright bad production.
Now, in case that wasn't enough, remember when I told you there were 11 minutes left in the show when this 4-minute match started? So using the math that I learned in first or second grade, whenever they started teaching us how to subtract with 2-digit numbers, I know that there are 7 minutes left in the show now. And now it's time for the Don West plug. Next week, we will hear more about Bound for Glory. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. We'll also have AJ versus Jarrett for the world title. Simon and Swinger versus Doring and Roadkill for the tag titles. Gilberti's surprise team versus America's Most Wanted. Raven versus Slash. And Michael Shane versus Chris Sabin versus Chris Daniels for the X Division title. And I started writing, and now AJ Styles comes out for his promo. No, he doesn't. Instead, Jimmy Hart, yes, that Jimmy Hart, appears via the telephone and has a message from Hulk Hogan. And the message from Hulk Hogan was, does Jarrett think he can fly to Japan and make Hogan bleed? Jimmy told Jarrett to find the two biggest, baddest bodyguards and make sure there's no one hiding under the ring. Make sure there's nobody sneaking in through the ticket counter door. I had no idea what the fuck he was trying to say here, except Hogan was going to send the nasty. It sounded like he was saying Hogan was going to send the nasty boys after fucking Jarrett. And today got Jimmy Hart to say that Hulkamania is coming and he will be armed. Why is Hulk Hogan coming to the arena with guns? Or is Hulk Hogan coming to the arena with the Nasty Boys? It's probably the latter, because let's face facts. Like, if he could bring in the Nasty Boys in 2010, when they were both severely out of ring shape, he could certainly bring them in 2003 when they would be less severely out of ring shape.
I mean, when we saw them in 2010, I mean, Sags was okay. It was Knobs that couldn't do anything.
Sags hadn't wrestled since like 96 when he had that thing with Scott Hall. Like when Scott Hall, and they did that thing where like Sags told Hall not to hit him in the head or something, and so Hall kept hitting him in the head, and so Sags beat the fuck out of him on a house show or something. And then he sued WCW.
And won.
Okay. So remember when I said the tag team main event started with 11 minutes to go? And that went 4 minutes. And so that brought us down to 7 minutes. And then we got the next week plug. And then we got the Jimmy Hart plug. And then remember, we still have an AJ Styles promo, and we have 2 minutes left to go in the show. Okay, there's 2 minutes left to go in the show, and here comes Jeff Jarrett. Jeff Jarrett comes out and cuts a promo. And does he cut a promo on AJ Styles, the World Heavyweight Champion?
Hell no.
No. He cuts a promo on Jimmy Hart. And you could barely hear what he was saying. Then he says he promises to Hulk Hogan that he will win the NWA title. AJ finally comes out, and I'm like, okay, he's running to the ring. So I'm like, okay, he knows they're almost out of time. So he's going to run to the ring and grab a microphone and like cut some like 30-second, I'm going to kick your ass promo to like, fire up the crowd to go home. Nope. Instead, AJ comes out to brawl with Jarrett, which got broken up by the referees and the black shirts. Dusty Rhodes walked down the aisle for some fucking reason. And AJ looked like a chump here. And I get, this is a lot to do with AJ's inexperience more than anything else. Because remember, he's only been wrestling for about 4 or 5 years at this point. And AJ, I don't know how many pull-apart brawls AJ has ever really been in, but Jeff Jarrett's doing the thing where you're being held apart and he's breaking loose to run after the pile. And I imagine he was trying to give a non-verbal cue to AJ to do the same, but AJ was just happily being held back by security and not doing anything. And so Jarrett is having to run after him, and Tenay's trying to cover it up, saying that they're both breaking away when obviously AJ isn't even trying. And this was a shitty go home for next week's world title match.
Oh, yeah, it was. Makes me glad I got my hair done.
They did such a disservice to AJ Styles on his last show as champion. Because again, spoiler alert, Jarrett's winning next week. He was not only made an afterthought in his own world title match, they didn't even pretend that Hogan said he was coming after the NWA title. They didn't even pretend that Hogan was going to come in and wrestle AJ Styles. Guess what? They could have made something out of that. Hogan said he wants the NWA title. Jarrett has already said, no, motherfucker, you're not winning this belt. AJ could have said, no, motherfucker, you're not winning my belt. Do something with that. They are not even pretending that AJ Styles is going to win next week. It is not even, it is a foregone conclusion. They are not even this show gave you zero, zero, zero reason to believe that AJ Styles is even in the league of Jeff Jarrett, much less the league of Hulk Hogan, and that AJ Styles will not be wrestling Hulk Hogan at Bound for Glory. It's going to be Jeff Jarrett, and we got to put the world title on him because Hogan wants the NWA title. AJ was buried by barely being on the show. AJ was on the show for like a total of like 2 minutes because he came out after Russo got beat up and stood angrily in the ring, and then he came out at the end of the show. That was it. Last week, I said, I can't wait because I'm going to bet Jarrett cuts a fiery go-home promo. I'm going to bet AJ does a promo, and it's going to be like, okay, we didn't get that. And I'm going to bet there's a reason that they don't talk about this show as doing a buy rate like Raven and Jarrett did, or even had the heat that R-Truth and Jarrett did last year when they built it up. This was announced, and that was it. Because AJ spent the entire time feuding with Dusty Rhodes and Vince Russo, and Jarrett spent the whole time feuding with Hulk Hogan.
And Vince Russo.
So let's just go to it. Match quality 3.43. And if you think that's low, wait till what I have to say about the rest of it. Overall enjoyment 2.5. This was not a good show at all. The booking was bad. The matches are more bad than good. And the last 20 minutes especially were completely rushed, even though they went off the air 5 minutes earlier than they usually do. Literally, this was not a high water mark for TNA. But you look at it, we didn't need that fucking Doring and Roadkill match. If they were really running short, which they weren't, but if they were, that match, which hadn't been announced ahead of time, could have been cut. They could have just brought it back next week. But no. That Eric Young and Sanjay Dutt match, it was like the third best match on the show, but that didn't need to be on this show. They could have cut that. No, they didn't. Instead, it's like everything, the entire show, it's like somehow the entire show was rushed. Somehow the opening video package went 10 minutes longer than it was supposed to, and the rest of the show suffered in comparison. And that's me being facetious because the opening video package didn't go 10 minutes longer than it was supposed to. Future build, by the way, 2.0, because there's barely anything that I care to watch, and they buried AJ. And I gave this as an overall rating of a 2.64. One of the lowest ratings we've ever had on this show.
It's dire, this show. There was good matches, but everything around it was dreadful. And it makes me not look forward to see next week. Because, yeah, we're going to get 3 title matches, but 2 of them are stuff where there's a foregone conclusion. Come on, we don't think Diamond and Swinger are losing to Danny Doring and Roadkill again for the titles.
And hey, I bet Sabin, Daniels, and Shane, I'm going to bet that's going to be a banger.
Yeah.
Or hopefully they'll have the time to have a banger. Because every time we say that, they end up giving them 6 minutes and have, multiple shitty finishes that make you not give a fuck. But I bet if they're given the chance, that match is going to be a banger.
I'm cheating at the time that the match was given. Yeah, it's got possibility of being a banger.
But it's that's it. Raven and Slash, we haven't seen the match before, but we've seen the match before. And Gilberti's surprise team, don't spoil it, but it's I have no idea who it is, but it's it may be Siaki and Ekmo, and if it is, I bet that's a good match. It may be the red shirts, and I bet AMW can have a good match with the red shirts. So we'll see who it ends up being. If it's Glenn Gilberti and David Young, well, hopefully the match only got 5 minutes, but we'll see next week. And here's the thing with AJ and Jeff Jarrett, I bet come next week it's going to be a good match. And I honestly don't know how Jarrett wins. Like, obviously, I know Jarrett wins, and I'm sure it's going to be some bullshit finish. But I have no idea what the actual finish of next week's match is, so we'll see. But yeah, and I like this is we're having another streak of bad shows, which will never improve my mood. Is when it's got to be next Friday or next Saturday, and I'm sitting there like, I gotta fucking watch TNA now.
And it's going to make matters worse for me because I'm already going to be in a bad mood because in real life, I have mandatory overtime on Saturday. I thought I was going to have it this week, which means I would have had to miss this show. And Trey, I want thanks in advance for taking this bullet for you. But instead, I'm going to have 6 weeks of work, and then on a Sunday where I want to just relax and hopefully celebrate the Mariners going to the World Series, I got to watch TNA.
If it helps, the Blue Jays are going to make the World Series, but,
Fuck you.
Spoiler. Anyway, so we're going to
as a Mariners fan, fuck you.
I don't care enough. I only know the Blue Jays aren't it because they beat the Yankees.
By the way, it was sweet revenge. It was sweet karma, we'll say. The Yankees fans booed the Canadian national anthem. And the Yankees got piped in Game 4.
For the record, I had no idea who was even in the NLCS, but apparently it's the Phillies and the Dodgers.
Phillies got eliminated by the Dodgers. Right now, Game 5 of the NLDS is it's between the Cubs and the Brewers. And last time I checked, the Brewers were winning, and they are still winning 2-1. We could talk about the NLCS on next week's show.
I literally typed in NLCS into Google, and the first thing that popped up was Dodgers beat Phillies 2-1. So I just assumed that was the NLCS. Anyway, we'll call it here before we start talking about Banana Ball or something. But that's going to do it for this week's show. Cindy, what UK game show should everyone watch?
Jungle Run. It's Legends of the Hidden Temple, but it's fully fleshed out.
All right. Go watch Jungle Run. Don't watch TNA. Just listen to us lose our minds about this. But thank you all for listening. Hope you all enjoyed the show. We'll talk to you again in 7 days.
Really? Do we have to?
No.